Hello and welcome to the worst team up ever. This is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier after show. I am Paul, as I was before, really. And this is Liz, who you've met countless times on this channel and various other podcasts. Liz, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Paul?
Good. I'm good. I am basking in the glow of another great Disney Plus show. Right off the bat, we've got to say we're just going to jump into this. This one's going to be a bit fast and loose, guys. Completely different show to the one we've just watched, which was WandaVision. And I've got to say right away, ticking more boxes for me. This is much more my kind of show, much more my kind of speed. What about you?
Well, this is, I think very rightly, they've just, taken a total swerve from kind of the weirdness of WandaVision. And this feels really very much like you're right back in the MCU. But the vibe that I got from this, at least from the first episode, is that this is kind of like a little bit more of an intimate sort of look at the lives of these guys as people. It's doing something that the MCU normally doesn't have time for, which is going into their personal lives and taking time with that. With Sam, we get to see his family in Louisiana and the struggles they're going through, some money problems, some family issues. And with Bucky, we're kind of slowing down with him too. We're taking a look at him, sort of really kind of getting into his PTSD and, his life in the world after everything he went through. And so it's like, being really right back in the MCU, but slowing it down and close, going in closer and, really looking at these guys' lives. And I really like that because I think that's sometimes, what the comics do, really well, because comics have been going on for so long, is that they can take time to, kind of really get into their lives as people. And that is something the MCU, you get glimpses of that. But I think the shows, they'll really be able to kind of delve into that. And I really like that. So I really liked this episode, mainly for that reason.
Okay, yeah. See, I completely agree with all that. You do get a dive into who they are and what's been going on. And of course, we're still dealing with the ramifications of the snap, which I think, the whole Infinity Saga is going to bleed out throughout these first few Marvel shows. Because we know, obviously, Loki's coming and that's going to be very much infused with what has happened back in the kind of Infinity Saga. I kind of like that. I like that there are continuing real world ramifications for the events, because that's actually something comics don't always handle that well because of the whole kind of illusion of change thing. It is the continuing ramifications of an event, especially the huge kind of crossover events like we've just had. But for me, first of all, I was utterly thrilled with the opening scene. It was incredible. And I was looking at it and looking at how much you could definitely tell was done real for real, versus what was kind of computer assisted or sort of visual effects assisted. And I was thinking, you know what, this is Christopher Nolan level kind of reality of filmmaking, because it really reminded me of the opening scene of Dark Knight Rises, and that sort of kind of level of investment in doing it for real. So all the stuff with the wingsuits is just incredible. Obviously, guys, this being an after show, we are going to go full spoiler. So just a heads up if you're watching, if you're like a couple of minutes in now, not too late to turn us off, and then of course come back to us and watch us over and over again, preferably. Now, that sort of thing really kind of impressed me because surprisingly, a lot of the MCU stuff is done, quote unquote, for real. And I'm actually continually amazed at how much they do physically. So it was a real kind of pleasing thing for me to see that. You get this new character, Torres, is it? The kind of, he seems like he's going to be this sort of not guy in the chair, but he's going to be kind of an integral part of the show. And we're presented with a new threat in the form of an old villain, which is Batroc. And I literally shouted out. I was in here on my own, and I literally shouted out, "Yes, Batroc!" I was so pleased to see George St. Pierre come back as Batroc the Leaper, and doing what he does best, bouncing around. And that whole sequence was just an incredible thing of setup, consequence, action, you know what I mean? And it just played out so well. So yeah, hooked right away. But then we jump to something else completely, which is these sort of criminal or mob looking guys getting attacked by the Winter Soldier. And I genuinely thought for a minute, and I don't know if you thought this too, because you're not giving any context for that scene.
No,
it just happens. It just starts. I genuinely thought, oh my God, he's kind of gone back to being the Winter Soldier, but he's doing it. I was hoping that the motivations were different this time, and he was kind of taking out all the, because I thought those guys were Russian, and I thought, I wonder if those are some of the guys that maybe Zemo came across at one stage or another, and who were kind of working in that Siberian outpost, and he's kind of going after them. But you kind of then
stabbing people. I was like, no. It's like, that's probably not what he's up to these days. I know what you mean. Like, when I saw him with the mask, I was like, okay, this can't be set now. Like, I guess I pretty quickly sort of clocked that, like, okay, no, this is like a flashback. Or
I thought he'd just gone back to it. I thought he'd just chosen.
Because it starts by like, just busting through the wall and started murdering people left and right. So I was like, that seems a little less like Bucky and more brainwashed assassin Bucky.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like I was more willing to kind of buy into this sort of, going on a mission of revenge thing, and then you see him kind of go after that completely innocent dude, and you realise, oh no, it's not. At which point we see it's a nightmare. And he's in therapy, as you say, dealing with his PTSD. The therapy session scene was extremely funny,
like hilarious. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, that's sort of like, like straight out of, a comic, it's something like along the lines of the Matt Fraction Hawkeye or something like that, where, you get the really sort of like day-to-day life, things these guys would have to deal with, including therapy and like, his like ball-busting therapist, at her notebook.
Funny enough, I just got finished reading yesterday, and I did a write-up for it on the website. It's on there now, folks, if you want to go to the comiccrush.com and have a look. For Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Cut Off One Head, which is a 5-issue miniseries from sort of last year, by Derek Landy and I hope I'm getting this right, Federico Vincentini. And that is very much the vibe of this show. Like it has that sort of humor. It's got Zemo as well, which is great. But that's definitely worth checking out. But there is a sort of full kind of write up on it on the site now. I mean, the therapy scene was great, and it's great then to kind of see Bucky, living his life. He's back in New York. He's kind of
like a civilian,
Yeah.
He's been pardoned. Which is like a, sort of clean slate for him, which is great. But he's sort of at loose ends. Like he's going to his therapy sessions. Apparently he's been, doing some online dating, which hasn't worked out for him too well. But he's got less than 10 contacts in his phone. He doesn't really talk to anyone. He avoids everyone. So he hasn't really acclimated. He hasn't really, found his new place in the world yet. Especially without Steve, because Steve was the only, remnant of his past that he had left, and now Steve is gone. So he's very much, sort of untethered and, doesn't really know what to do with himself. So, as his therapist pointed out, she's like, oh, it's pathetic. I'm the only person you're talking to. But she kind of is, his only friend.
Well, he's friends with Yuri, but you find out quite quickly that what he's actually trying to do is go through this list of people. Some people he seems to be making amends to, and some people he's making amends for. He talks about in the therapy scene about the United States senator that he helped bring to power, who was actually a member of Hydra, and how he's kind of leveled that balance there. But with Yuri, like, you don't realize till you're in that restaurant scene that, of course, Yuri is the father of the man you see him kill in the sort of nightmare flashback sequence. And what's also interesting about that, just before you see him break up a fight between the old guy and a much younger man, and that is interesting, because what I see in that moment is Steve.
Right. Yeah. Right. In the back alley, just like that, that moment with Steve when Bucky came to break up that fight, when Steve was the little guy, in Cap 1.
But not just that. It's the slightly almost pacifist nature of Steve Rogers. And it brought me right back to that moment in the first Captain America film where he's asked, why do you want to go and kill Nazis? And he's like, I don't want to kill anyone. I just don't like bullies. And that is very much, carrying through, the spirit of that definitely lives on in Bucky. And it's interesting because when you look at Sam, I always worry about Sam as a choice for Cap, because he's very much a showboat, and I'm not being like he's very much the kind of much flashier, sometimes slightly more self-serving one of the two. And I kind of always wondered if that he, if at least in terms of the film versions, he wasn't the best choice for Cap. But
I am obsessed with the Brubaker run. Obviously, we've talked about this many times. Wherein Bucky is Cap, and I love that run, and I think that they handled it so well there. And I think I would still love to see Bucky as Cap, but I think the reason that they went with Sam in the films is like Bucky, he's a mess, like he's a big mess. Just emotionally, he's not stable really enough to be the one to wield the shield right now, I think, as we can see from his like sort of screwed up life and deep need for therapy. So I'm still kind of hanging on to some hope that it could happen, but I think right now Sam is like, he's the stable one. He's probably the one who could handle it better right now. And Sam, obviously he has his comics legacy as Cap too. So, I think I really don't know what to expect from this series. I don't know if it's going to wind up with Sam with the shield or not. It could still be Bucky. We don't know. Could be neither, as evidenced by the end of the episode.
I'm going to make a prediction right now, and I'm going to say that at the end of the show, we're going to end up with 2 Captain Americas.
I love that. I mean, come on. All right. So episode 1, you're like throwing.
I'm calling it now.
Okay, you're calling it now.
I'm going to call something else. But I mean, the comics may have already proved me right, but I haven't read a lot of the comics as we talked about. I read that entire run of the Brubaker stuff, which he very kindly loaned me sort of quite a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago now, back when the second Captain America movie was coming out, which I found quite overwhelming at the time because
it's long.
You like all 4 big books.
I know it's massive, but it's amazing. Like start to finish, it's just incredible. And particularly, I mean, like right out of the gates, like, that's him bringing Bucky back and, and like only, like a fairly short ways in taking over the mantle for quite a long time. So, I mean, that could still happen. I want to see that. And if you're like laying it down that there could be 2 Caps at the end of the series, like, I am very sold on that idea. I love that.
And just for clarity for the viewers, I mean, Bucky had been dead for a long time.
He was like one of the untouchables, like as far as characters who were meant to stay dead. I obviously, right around the same time, Jason Todd came crawling out of the ground too. So, apparently nothing is sacred, but I love both of those characters, so that's fine with me.
Yeah, me too. I don't think anyone stays dead in comics.
Except for
yeah, true. But have they even brought back? Yeah, but those deaths are catalysts for the characters,
right?
I think. Whereas I think the death of a sidekick, Gwen Stacy, all that kind of stuff, are more kind of milestones along the way. But they're not the catalyst for the characters, and I think the reason those particular characters you mentioned stay dead is because they are the origin. They are the origin story, really. But yeah, I mean, the thing kind of then slows down and takes a breather. It's quite a long show. It was nearly an hour, which I was really pleased to see. And we start to see, as you say, Sam's sort of inner life. His sister has a kind of fishing boat that's actually, belongs to their family. They're trying to get money together. And of course, it brings you to one of the strange realities of realities of the fictional world, which is superheroes don't get paid. And
I love that they address this. This is like one of the things I really liked about this show was that, little details like that, like, questions you would sort of banter around with your friends, like, oh, I wonder how they get paid. Do they get paid? Like, no is the answer. They're actually kind of addressing some of these little things that, just kind of flicker around in the back of your mind when you're watching this stuff.
And of course, you have Sam saying that, hey, look, a lot of this is done on goodwill. And of course, you have, Yuri paying for Bucky's lunch. And you realize that, kind of a lot of it is kind of the extended good graces of civilians, without whom half of which wouldn't be there, without superheroes. So that's always kind of fascinating to see that work, because it's a real world reality. How do we get paid? How do we make a living? How do we function in this world that's driven by money? What do we do? And it was nice to see that, but also then to see the reality of the fact that, hey, banks might treat poorer people of color quite a bit differently than maybe they'd treat you and I, or
well, I mean, he didn't like the banker, like he thought it was like the coolest thing ever that he was sitting there with, like the Falcon, but he was still like, well, at the end of the day, so, you don't have any credit for the last 5 years. Well, I had vanished off the face of the earth and was dead. Doesn't matter. Anybody who was blipped apparently, just has bad credit now.
And you realize in that why people like Aunt May are starting sort of funds up for people kind of dispossessed because of the snap and the blip. And
sessions probably would have all been lost. Like, obviously your job would have gone. Like, it's a tough reality to wake up to. I mean, it's great to be alive again, I'm sure, but at the same time, you might be in a mess of financial trouble at the end of it. And his poor sister, was like left to kind of just deal with everything on her own for 5 years. She's like not convinced that, he's going to swoop in and save her.
And of course, Sam isn't taking the mantle just yet of Cap. He's kind of unsure about it. You have that lovely kind of scene where they're placing the shield inside the museum at the Smithsonian, along with all the rest of the exhibit. And I loved that scene between Don Cheadle and Christ, I can't believe it. His name's gone. He's the star of the show, and I've forgotten his name.
Who?
Sam and Anthony Mackie. Thank you. Yeah, I can't believe it. It just went. Sorry. What can I say? I'm old, and I'm old, and this is unscripted, Liz.
Well.
Yeah, I love that scene between Don Cheadle and Anthony Mackie, where they're kind of walking through the remnants of Steve Rogers, and through the earlier movies, and through the remnants of the Infinity Saga. And that's a great way to kind of accentuate that this is actually kind of going to be about legacy in a lot of ways. And I think it's impossible now to do a Falcon. In fact, I was writing about it about this kind of cut off one head trade paperback. It's impossible to do anything about Captain America that deals with Sam or Bucky and not talk about legacy. So I kind of love that they bring that in straight away. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of begin to address this issue. Well, we see it by the end of the episode, which we'll talk about in a minute. How are we going to address the legacy of Captain America? And we get to see Torres again, which I'm really pleased about. I really like this kid, and I hope that he's going to stick around for the whole shebang and beyond. We see him kind of infiltrating this gang, the Flag Smashers.
Right. Yeah. Who, it's like sort of an anarchist group.
Yeah.
Who are, who thought the world was a better place, during the blip. Agreed with Thanos, essentially.
Yeah, and there is an element of that. And again, it goes to a kind of very realistic way of thinking where, and you know what, I'm guilty of thinking this too, which is I do feel like partly the planet would be a lot better off with less of us on it. Now, whether or not I feel I would be willing to give up my life or someone else's life in order for the planet to survive, I don't know. I don't think so.
Why not?
What do you mean, why not?
I said probably not.
Oh, right. I was going to say.
Well,
because then it's that thing of a kind of grander humanity versus the almost kind of microcosm of humanity where you're dealing with the day-to-day and you're dealing with people. And I think, again, that plays out in the scene of, Sam trying to preserve his sister's way of life and help her move on and advance and grow as a person, and his nephews and things. And then with Bucky, breaking up that fight, I see this kind of thing where the smaller moments of humanity have always got to survive. And in fact, in a way, it's these smaller moments that count more rather than the grander gestures. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to play with. Now, the Flag Smashers are kind of fascinating because we see this kind of audacious robbery they perform in Switzerland. And we see the guy we think is their leader. Now, I've got some theories about this.
okay.
But I'm probably wrong. You can probably set me straight. But I can't really talk about them until we get to the end of the episode. But we see this guy is probably powered in some way. He definitely makes kind of short work of quite a few people, including Torres. I like, obviously these guys are going to be one of the major threats. I don't know if they're kind of going to link up with Batroc, because we see Batroc survive. I hope Batroc's going to come back in this.
That would be nice.
That would be great. And of course, then there's this idea that things are better during the snap. I don't know. But I can't empathise with their methods. If I can empathise with the argument and the message, I can't empathise with the methods that they're using because it's terrorism. And I think one of the interesting things that the show points out is that it's only terrorism because they're not state sanctioned. Do you know what I mean? Like, no, but do you know what I mean? Because you have that whole thing at the beginning where they're not allowed to cross the border into Libya because then it would become an act of war or terrorism. And I think, if things were just slightly flipped, the flag smashers would be, if the flag smashers were working for, let's say, the British or the Americans trying to destabilize a Far Eastern country or a Middle Eastern country, it would be all hunky dory, but it's kind of not because they're kind of operating against the interests of the wider Western world. So I think there's interesting stuff to play with there. And again, it's a moral argument that Steve would have brought up. Like he would have kind of brought that up as a moral argument. He would have said, well, hold on, I can see kind of where they're coming from in one respect. I don't think he would have agreed everyone was better off during the snap, even though it was him that kind of brought up the points about how life was changing and how we had to move on and stuff.
Well, I can't see him agreeing that it would be better if half.
No. I'm just, I don't think he thinks that. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. And I mean that, basically, obviously they're disgruntled about it, but, what are they going to do about it at this point? Everyone's back.
Yeah.
What can you do, unless you're planning some sort of genocidal act?
That might be what they're planning, but I don't think they're going to be going after the average schmo. I think that the genocide is going to be super battle, but like the kind of Avengers, if you like. I think that's going to be the thing, especially sort of just looking at some of the trailers and listening to some of the things that Zemo said. I think that might be an angle we're going for in this. I don't know. I'm kind of keen to find out. I'm happy to be proven wrong, as with WandaVision, where I was proven wrong every single bloody week. I love that.
I don't think that's one thing that I don't think we're going to get from this show is that sort of mind bendy,
oh no, yeah,
hunt for answers that we got with WandaVision every week. Not really knowing what was going on. And, this I think is going to be, a little more straightforward, and it's not going to have everybody sort of mind boggled week in, week out, trying to guess, who might pop up and, that sort of thing. I think it's this, looks like, very much like a Captain America movie stretched out over a number of episodes.
Yeah. I think it's always interesting because looking at Bucky, I think Bucky would have been happy to stay dead. Like he'd been happy not to have come back after the snap.
I mean, I believe that now because he's clearly depressed. He's clearly, traumatized. And I hope that this show is going to kind of be about, him really healing because he obviously did some healing in Wakanda, which he kind of quickly addresses. But you get the idea that he's really still far from, being completely healed. So I my hope is that, by connecting with Sam and hopefully going, building up to having a friendship with him rather than a sort of antagonistic relationship, that, he's going to find his place in the world and, and kind of get through his trauma, by the end. So that's my prediction. That's my hope.
Yeah, that would be nice. I hope Sam, as a character, manages to fit back in terms of fulfilling that need to be the provider and be the kind of, to be the hero. Like I think that's the thing with Sam, is he really wants to be the hero, and I think that's kind of partly where the sort of showboating, slightly kind of arrogant thing comes from.
But he also, I mean, when we met Sam back in Winter Soldier, he actually was leading a support group for
very true.
veterans, and so he's actually somebody who could actually have a really empathetic relationship with Bucky. And I kind of see them both helping each other heal in the wake of Steve's absence, let's say, not death, because he's not dead, but without Steve there.
Yeah. And I'd be interested to see if he makes an appearance, if Steve makes an appearance at all. That would be something, because that would then kind of be addressing all those swirling rumors about Chris Evans coming back as Captain America, because that literally kind of would be it, wouldn't it? But yeah, I have all kinds of hopes and interest for the show. I hope it's going to sustain that kind of level of action. Before we talk about the very end of the show, I've got to mention this because it just struck me as really funny. There was speaking of the kind of adversarial relationship where kind of one is on the inside and the other isn't. I was reading about Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan today, discovering how Endgame was going to end, like what would happen with Cap and the Shield and stuff. And Anthony Mackie found out before, because he went to like a football party at someone's house, where apparently Chris, the guy who plays Quill, Chris
Pratt.
Yes, Chris Pratt was kind of holding cool, and Chris Evans snuck Anthony Mackie away from the party and said, "Oh, come and have a look. I got the final scenes today, like in script form," and he let him read it. What was going to happen. And during the interview, Sebastian Stan was just like, "I wasn't invited to that party." And Anthony Mackie just went to him, "You don't watch football."
Oh my God.
So yeah, Sebastian Stan found out, and his reaction was apparently, "Oh, so this is how it's going to end. He gets the shield." And they were like, "Yeah." He was kind of, "Okay, well, just give me a minute to process." So I love the fact that plays out slightly in real life. It'll be really curious to see where it goes. I mean,
I really can't wait for them to share the screen together, because they have just this hilarious chemistry together. All the moments between them, sort of in Civil War and everything, just or not. Well, yeah.
Apparently, the show came out of the Volkswagen scene in Civil War, where they were kind of sitting there and he asked him to move the seat forward and he refuses. Apparently Feige took a look at that and said, "Oh, there's a comedy show right there."
Yeah.
And when he was asked by Bob Iger sort of a few years later, "Can you start coming up with shows for Disney Plus? We're going to go to streaming." That was one of the first ones where he went, "Oh, I've got an idea." And let's go with it. I mean, obviously not a comedy.
Yeah, no, I mean, all the little clips that they've released, we're in there bickering at each other. I just, I can't wait to get to all that,
So when we get to the end of the show, and this is why I've kind of held off talking about a lot of the villains so far, if any, not there's that many in the show, but we get John Walker, the US agent, who's like the kind of replacement Captain America. Now we only get a brief appearance, which we kind of see through a television screen. I don't know what the story. Have you read any US agent stuff?
Okay, I mean, I know, I haven't read all of it, but the gist of the character is that, basically his backstory is sort of that, his brother was in the military, he was killed in action, and he sort of wanted to honor his legacy by becoming a hero, and he's, like a soldier, he's patriotic, but he got sort of led astray by this other villain, and became like a villain, basically, although he obviously didn't think he was a villain. He was called Super Patriot. And he, was basically, like Cap, with all the patriotism, but none of the morals,
Right.
So he, sort of ended up fighting Cap a bunch of times and was finally, Cap sort of like brought him back down to, to Earth and, kind of helped him get through his problems and, become an actual hero. So, he became Cap for a while. Like he was, first, I can't remember if he became US agent first or Cap first, but for a while he was selected by the government to replace Steve when Steve was like unavailable to be Cap. So there's a 10-year wherein John Walker is Captain America, and he kind of, he tries to stay on the righteous path and live up to Steve's legacy, but it's like the pressure is too much for him, and it nearly drives him nuts. So in a nutshell, he has been Cap, and so this storyline is following, right? Sorry,
I'm just teasing you, honestly. I love the fact. I love the fact that I can ask you like any question and you'll be able to kind of give me the full history. I think that's amazing. What I wanted to say was I think that I've got my suspicion that he might be the guy in Zurich.
I have my suspicion too. Yeah, that's how I felt about it.
So I think that there's a possibility there. However, buddy, do you think that's too obvious? I mean, come on. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it's like it's in keeping with the character,
But
I agree. I mean, if he thinks he's being patriotic, like I said, it's like, like a misguided Cap, basically. That's what you have in John Walker. Okay. So if he thinks that he's doing it for love of country, then he'll do it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm just really curious to see where it'll go in the next few episodes. I mean,
I could be wrong. Like, that was my guess. But I don't know. It could be a totally different character. But that, your guess is as good as mine, literally, at this point, because
the same guess.
There you go. So.
But yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. One thing I did notice in the credits list that did interest me was right at the end they've got special thanks to, and they thank the sort of major Captain America creators in that block. One of the people, I mean, not every major creator, but one of the people they thank is Nick Spencer. Yeah, and I was thinking, are we going to see a sort of Secret Empire play somehow? Like, are we going to get something like that? I know.
I don't know. I mean, my guess there really was, had more to do with his run on, like, the Sam as Captain America run.
Yeah.
I mean, because, he wrote all that.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So
see, I wasn't aware that he'd done that. I thought his only real sort of major Cap work was.
Right. No. I mean, he wrote a ton of Cap, but notably he wrote, a big long run with Sam as Cap.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Again, this is why always need you on this show, because you'll set me straight about nonsense like that. My mind was going nuts because it's like, yeah, because they used the cosmic cube in Secret Empire, and the Infinity Stones are still technically around, aren't they? Because we don't know where the Infinity Stone. Am I wrong? We don't know where the Infinity Stones went after Endgame.
Well, we know that they put them back where they were sort of meant to be.
Oh yeah, sorry, yes. But I mean, there's no telling they couldn't then find their way back
Oh,
because, of course,
sure. Yeah. I mean, I kind of don't think we've seen the last of the Infinity Stones. I mean, already, in WandaVision, they've kind of had to deal with repercussions of the Infinity Stones. But I think that they're going to probably put them to rest for a while. I think. But hard to say for sure. Yeah. I didn't really Secret Empire and all that stuff didn't really cross my mind for this because I think that they've got quite a lot on their plate in terms of what we already know they've got to contend with. So they've got US Agent, they've got Baron Zemo, they've got all the sort of post Endgames, post Blip stuff to deal with. So I think keeping in some cosmic cubes and things like that, might be overkill.
I mean,
and I feel like the Cap movies are kind of in a way, they're the most sort of grounded, in terms of, even though obviously there are kind of magic elements, and yes, the cosmic cube, sort of first shows up in Cap 1 and all that stuff. I think, they're the most militaristic.
Yes.
And a lot of the fighting is very grounded, very sort of hand-to-hand action and stuff like that. So I don't need, I'm not expecting anything too mystical from this.
Yeah. Okay. I'm always waiting for Marvel to wrong foot me, as they do consistently. So fingers crossed. We'll see what happens. But I don't know. I'm ready for it. I really loved it. I genuinely enjoyed right from the get-go. In fact, I might even watch it again tonight.
I think I will watch it again tonight. It was everything I wanted it to be, really. It really, really was. I have to say, I was hoping for what they gave me, which is, just a return to those films, because I love those films so much. I love those characters so much. And it did what I wanted them to do, which is to really kind of delve into them, and their lives as people, before we even get to them meeting face to face, which I absolutely can't wait for, because just all of that stuff, all of the clips, just in solid gold, cannot wait. But I really like that this episode took the time to really catch you up to where they are in their lives, and the things that they're dealing with before they have to go butt heads and work together.
Yeah, and I'm really keen to see Zemo.
I cannot wait to see Zemo. Cannot wait.
Now, our buddy Michael Edgy told us that he felt that the red-headed girl who popped up, and I think she pops up in this episode as well, it might turn out to be Echo. I don't think that's going to be Echo now. I'm not.
I have my doubts. No.
Sure, yeah. Sorry, Mike. Although I'm always willing to apologise to Mike if I'm wrong. But yeah, I'm really kind of keen to see who she's going to turn out to be. Yeah, lots of stuff. I'm very excited. Can't wait for Zemo to pop up. Just really kind of
it's shaping up to be my dream show, basically.
And I think this is the thing. I was thinking about this today. I'm not necessarily in a rush to rewatch WandaVision. I think this might have, but then I always think the kind of more action-based of the Marvel movies, the more, as you say, grounded action-based of the Marvel movies, are the more rewatchable. Today, funny enough, I sat and watched Endgame again, and just while I was sort of doing a couple of articles and things, and I must be feeling a bit emotionally raw today because I blubbed every 5 minutes. I teared up at least every 5 minutes in the first up until the point where they start the time heist. I was tearing up quite.
I can't watch Endgame without just tears pouring, it's been a while since I've watched it, because every time I do, it's just woo, literally emotional wreck for the entire film, in a good way. But yeah, I mean, it is it's not an easy rewatch.
No, it's not. I do really enjoy it, but I much prefer the first chunk of the film, which I think we talked about back when we did the pod. I much prefer the first chunk of the film to the second. Like, I think once the time heist comes in, it, for me anyway, it kind of drops a little bit. Not because it's bad in any way, but just because I'm always curious to see, you know, what's the world like after the world ends, you know, and the full repercussions of that. And that's something I was really kind of keen to explore. Apparently, I didn't know this. The scene with Barton at the beginning of Endgame was originally in Infinity War.
Really?
Yeah. So they were gonna cut away right near the end, and you were gonna do the whole thing with Clint, and then his family would disappear. And apparently, they did try a version of it with it in, and they were just like, no, it just slows everything down.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting because it's such an impactful opening to Endgame. That you really, it really wouldn't work on the tail end of and they're absolutely right. It would have slowed it down too much, and it would have just been too much of a sidestep to be impactful. Because it's a long scene, but it worked so well as the opening. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I only just found that out today. Something I just didn't know before. But yeah, anyway, we'll be back every Saturday, we hope, with one of these. So we've got 9 episodes to go. Be interesting to see where it will go. We might have a couple of guests on. So I've been approached by a couple of people already. You might want to pop up and say hi during the show, Liz. So yeah, we might get a guest on. I don't know when. It could be the last episode. It could be midway through. But yeah, I'm going to talk to a couple of people about coming on and offering us their view during the show, which would be great because it would give us a break from talking.
I love talking.
You never.
What are you trying to do to me here, Paul?
It's great actually because one of us needs to be the talker, whereas I'm just the babbling brook who can't quite get the words out. It's always great to have someone who's willing to come in and actually talk about this, and someone who is so knowledgeable about the MCU, Liz, and indeed Marvel Comics. I bow to your superior knowledge there. Although I'll be reading more Cap. I've just read that Bucky and Falcon thing. I've just read Captain America White, which I'll be writing about tomorrow for the website. I'm just about to read a Brubaker Dale Eaglesham miniseries called Super Soldier. I don't know when that was done, but I'm really keen to read that because it's part of the Brubaker run that I've never read.
It is. It's kind of like, okay, so I think that is like post Steve coming back.
Right.
For, like sort of, when Bucky's still Cap, Steve kind of wants to let Bucky carry on being Cap. So sure. He kind of is Steve Rogers' super soldier for a while, after returning from the dead. And that goes on for a while, and like that super soldier costume is what you see in Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Oh, and yes, indeed, it's not called Captain America. I'm just looking at the side of the book now, and it is called Steve Rogers Super Soldier, as you just pointed out. So I'm keen to give that a look. I'll be writing about that hopefully for the website as well. So lots coming up. If you want to check out comiccrush.com, guys, I really would appreciate it if you did. Hit me up on social media at The Comic Crush if you want to complain or talk to me or tell me that you liked an article or disliked an article. If you like this show, leave a comment down below in the comments section. You can follow The Comic Crush at The Comic Crush on Insta, on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook where we are just The Comic Crush. Liz, you can follow at Liz C. Jordan on Twitter. And yeah, we'll catch you next week. Liz, anything else you want to say before we go?
Absolutely loved this first episode. Loved it. Thought it was incredible. Cannot wait to be watching these every week and reviewing them with you, Paul.
Yeah. Well, that would be good. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm glad we got to do this. And I'm glad we got to do it again so soon after WandaVision ended.
I know. It's a great time to be alive. I get to
Well, we've got
review Marvel movies or MCU based TV series.
well, we got a big break in between this, because once this ends, which I think is sometime early May, apart from Black Widow, which we hope is going to come out in May, there's then a big break until June, because
that's when Loki comes out. Well, we'll just have to find out something to talk about in the interim.
Oh, Liz, just enjoy the holiday.
You'll miss me too much.
It's debatable. Speaking of things we missed, the Snyder Cut is, of course, dropped this weekend.
I've not watched it yet.
Right, me neither. Nikki and I will be doing the review on From Panels to Pictures very soon. We're aiming for next weekend, and there might be something special for the patrons, where you're going to get me and all my lovely co-hosts, Keith, Liz, and Nikki. I'm going to say dissecting the Snyder Cut. We'll have to wait and see.
Nice.
Early word is good on the Snyder Cut, interestingly enough. But we're not going to talk about it here. Keep an eye out for that from Panels to Pictures. That should be up sometime after next weekend. Sorry, guys, it's going to take us a bit of time to watch it. We're all in different countries, watching it on different platforms, and it is 4 bloody hours long. And being an old man, I need to get up and go for a whiz every now and then. So I don't know how long it's going to take me to get through this film personally, but I'm going to try and take a look at least some of it over the weekend, and we'll be back talking about that. So it's me and Nikki on From Panels to Pictures, probably next weekend we're looking at, and then hopefully me, Liz, Keith, and Nikki all on the Patreon channel. Do sign up. You can sign up for as little as £2 a month. Guys, thank you very much. I've been Paul, and this has been my co-worker, Liz. Catch you later, Liz.
Bye.
See you guys on the crush next time. Bye-bye.